Hey, welcome to Eatonton First United Methodist Church's Crosstalk podcast. It is the fourth week of Advent, and we are going to talk about love. What is love? What is not love? And we're just going to have a good time. We've already been having a good time. So sorry that we've been a little late getting on. We're going to have a conversation about some good stuff. And before we do that, we want to remember that it's Advent, and Joe DeLoach is going to help
our third
Brandon light all four candles: hope, peace, joy, and love. I wish I had some kind of like Norman Christian tune that I could offer, to make it Germanic like it really feels, Now on Christmas Eve we'll light the middle candle, the Christ candle. So love. We've been talking a lot about what is love, what is not love, and we off camera we can talk about things without you all hearing it, so I'll leave it there. But what goes on before the podcast stays before the podcast.
That's why there was no sound this morning.
But thank you to our producer over here, Brian Beveridge, who's sipping on his Dr. Pepper. And he looks kind of like Santa Claus. Hey, speaking of love, you were Santa Claus for a lot of kids. By the way, my daughters both were having a conversation with my in-laws last night on Skype, and they said, "Yeah, we saw." They asked if we saw Santa Claus, and Sarah said, "Yeah, we saw Santa Claus." And Hannah said, my youngest Hannah said, "That was Brian. That was Brian trying to be Santa Claus." And then then Sarah had to have some alibi. My wife Sarah had to have an alibi. Well, we already had a conversation with Santa Claus. That was just a stand-in, and we were having him come take pictures with people. He isn't really Santa, and so you didn't convince Hannah. I'm sorry. No. And then we talked about your Donald Trump colored hair.
Now our preschool kids.
I knew I'd seen that color somewhere before.
That's Donald Trump right there.
Our preschool kids, though, they were completely like in the dark.
They were all into it.
Oh, yeah.
That they didn't know you well enough to know that was Brian Beveridge.
Well, even the one that knows me and has been around me talking didn't recognize me.
Yeah.
One that got me was Lynn Gary. She looked Lynn's
exactly
like anything you. Yeah.
And if you look at those pictures that Bob Betzel took, like she is an actress for the camera.
Yeah.
I mean, she was like you were like in those pictures. She was like selling it. Like she should have been a magazine.
The pictures actress. Will be scrolling before the service Sunday.
Oh man.
Oh great.
Well, since we're live streaming it, I want to have it scrolling on the live feed.
So the best one for me was seeing Joe posing with Santa and Mrs. Claus. That's priceless. Your family every one of them deserves to get a framed picture of that.
Mm-hmm. That's why I'm not going to quit eating.
Yeah, but they just need to have a picture like that on their wall so everybody can see. All the families, all the children can show their friends and family their dad.
You talking about love. The other night, Sunday night, I love that. I think make a lot of memories. I will never forget Hannah, your Hannah, singing. That child I just stand there holding her little.
Can't read a lick.
Can't read a lick. One time it was upside down.
Yes.
We'd say turn the page. She'd turn just singing her heart out.
And she'd say, "I haven't turned the page yet."
Yeah, I loved it. And she was serious. I mean, this was like we were auditioning for a play. That was so funny. I love that.
Hannah is a lot like her father, a little bit like her mother. I'm not sure Eliana is just like my in-laws, but Hannah is a singer.
Just tap it again.
We're working on. We got technical difficulties. Our producer is asking us to work on technical stuff.
But I thought that.
Sorry about that.
I love that. To me, I looked at her and I thought that's Christmas, and I watched all the people that we sang to. You talk about love, Miss Snow.
That lady.
I love that. This is what Christmas is all about. Not that we were the London Philharmonic Choir.
She's our 90-something, one of our 90-somethings. And
she's singing with us.
Yeah.
She was singing along. Of course, the background, all of us non-singers were in the background.
Hey, I was singing.
When you were there, you ended up sitting in the van while we were walking up and down the avenue.
Look, I was told to meet y'all halfway.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we went all up and down the avenue, and of course over to Candler Court, and it was a wonderful time. I would do that more often if given the opportunity. I mean, it's just
We even had people stop at, a lady stopped in the middle of the road for us to sing to her.
yeah, that was wild. Yeah, she turned her phone on us, so we were broadcast to some friend of hers.
And see, the dogs only howled one time
Yeah.
When did they howl?
at the Rockers.
Oh, yeah. The dog got out and barked at us.
We didn't go to the Rockers. Oh,
Yeah,
those Rockers. Yeah, we didn't go to
The other
Rock's
Rockers.
house. We went to.
If we'd been brave enough, we could turn and go down and come back around. But
So, what is love? That's the question of all. That's the question that has been asked by every muse who's ever existed, and the question of love. What is love?
Well, there's different types of love.
Okay.
There's the love that you have for your spouse. That's unconditional love. There's the love that you have for your child, which is different than the love you have for your spouse or significant other.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's God's love.
Mm-hmm.
God's love is absolutely unconditional.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the way we're supposed to feel towards everyone. But we definitely should feel that type of love towards God.
Mm-hmm. Well, God is love. I mean, we define hope, peace, joy, and love, right? In our Advent candle or Advent wreath. So one of God's characters defined, and it's the final character that we offer to God is love. But the Bible talks. I'll define it from the context of the Bible. The Bible in the New Testament we get 4 forms of love. In the Greeks are better at defining love, or they were. When I say Koine Greek, that's kind of the biblical Greek. But they define love as with 4 different words. So it was a phileo, or filial love, brotherly love. So Philadelphia, brotherly. Phileo. That's the philo is a brotherly love. Mm-hmm. Eros. So erotica comes from that word. So a sexual love.
The love you're supposed to have for your spouse.
And then you have agape love, which is the love of God. And then there's storge love, and I can't remember what storge love is, but that's the 4th version of love. I'll have to look it up on my phone. But long story to say, the English language really underdefines love, and that makes it very hard for us in an English-speaking world to put an articulation on love or to misdefine or wrongly define love. So love has all of those components, or different forms of love have different forms of definition. Yeah. And we just say, if we just see someone, we'll say, "I just love you." Well, what does that mean? Or if we're fans of, say, the Atlanta Braves, "I just love the Atlanta Braves." Well, that doesn't make any sense. Like we sort of imply love, but
I love Philadelphia cheesesteaks.
Right, exactly. But I mean, is that really love? I mean, no, that's not love. Like that's not the understanding
It's
of
love.
God.
It's just a different type of love.
Right.
Which is how you explained it. Because I remember in men's group we were talking about that. We defined the different types of love. And
There's your definition.
Right now. But in men's group we discussed the different types of love, and yeah, they're all different types. And you're right. We underdefine in the English language the word love, because I love cheesesteak does not mean the same as I love my wife.
Right.
It does not mean the same as I love my daughter. It does not mean the same as my love for God. It's
Right.
not the same.
Right.
None of them are the same.
Right.
Well, the problem is a lot of people actually try to put that on the same platform, though. They try to make it the same level of love.
So to say that erotic love equates with agape love.
Right.
Yeah, it becomes like some blended salad of love that's not really truly fair. It's not fair to my wife for my love for her to be equated with the love of my daughters. It's just not the same. You can't. I say I love you to all 3 of them when they run off to the grocery store or something, but I love them in a very different way. Or when I speak of God's love is not, though it is hopefully flowing into my love for my daughters, and then subsequently or also the love of my wife. But those loves are not, those forms or definitions, those actions, those realities are not the same. And they shouldn't be the same. And our society, I'm going to go there, I'm just going to hit the cannon. Our society has I believe, has placed the variations of love's definitions into a pot of like a stew, and they've just sort of stirred them up, and we have begun to be told or teach ourselves of a love that's cheapened because it doesn't have the same clarity of definition. Does that make any sense?
I think we, as English speakers, because I know other countries have different words for different types of love. Some other countries. We as English speakers should come up with either the way the Greeks described it or whatever the case may be, more forms for love. Because you're right, there are different types of love. And I love my wife, but I don't love my daughter the same way I love my wife.
Right.
I don't love God the same way I love my wife and my daughter.
Right.
I don't love cheesesteaks the way I love any of them.
Right.
So love is...
Thankfully.
Yes. we need to come up with, other than, because the only words I can think of are lust and love. But even those are just completely different. Mm-hmm. We should come up with either better words or better definitions for the different types of love.
Right.
Like the Greeks use agape and storge and all the other ones.
Agape, storge, eros, and phileo or philos.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at the Bible, though, in Corinthians, it kind of spells out what love truly is. When it talks about love is patient, love is kind, love, doesn't boast.
It's used a lot in weddings.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's used a lot in weddings.
Mm-hmm.
It's because it truly shows what love actually
It's
is.
like Corinthians 13. I'll read it to us when I get to it.
Hey, Brandon, I hate to ask this, but can you power?
Love never fails.
Hit the power button.
Never
Yeah.
fails.
Like press and hold it.
Never.
It just turned on.
Whoa!
That has been so. Corinthians has been so paraphrased and rewritten.
Well, it gets.
The card's full again.
I would say. Are we still on?
Yeah.
I would say if you read that Corinthians 13 text, it 1 Corinthians, not 2 Corinthians. I'm on my Bible app here. Where are you? First, there it is. 1 Corinthians 13. It says, if I speak in tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging gong, or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledges, and if I have faith that can move mountains but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor, or give my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. This is from verse 4. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. Mm-hmm. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always preserves. Love never fails. But there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part and prophesy in part. But when completeness comes, what is in part disappears. When I was a child, I talked like a child, thought like a child, reasoned like a child. But I became a man. I put all ways of childhood behind me. For now we see only the reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part. Then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. Now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. And so Paul nails it. I guess that's what happens when you sit in a prison for months on end. You can think about these things.
Well, you think how many people do a lot of what, give to the poor, tithe to the church, do good, blah, blah, and they have no love in their life. They're like dry shells. And I think that turns a lot of non-believers off.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of times that's an easy way out. Is, I'll give money. I'll give this. I'll do that. Yeah. It's not actually giving to me, when you give love, you're giving a piece of yourself. Which, as humans, it's hard for us to give up a piece of ourselves because we're taught it's ours.
Yep. I mean, you're getting to the point of the institution, right? The institution cannot generate love.
Mm-mm.
There's nothing about law or the institution, though it's needed, right? It's needed. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I need this body, even though it's a flawed body and it makes lots of...
Well, the church is an institution. I think, for example, I'm sitting here thinking, I've heard so many people say they love this church. And what does that mean? I mean,
Exactly.
you know,
Are you a churchian? Do you worship churchianity?
that's right. Or
No.
Why do you, and I've asked myself that after I left and came back, why do I have such strong feelings and love this place? It's because of all the times I spent here
Right.
and the problems I worked through.
Right.
This church has history to you.
This morning, talking to my son,
could
who's
be
in
love.
his 40s, well, how old, 30s, well, how old Joseph is, I can't remember.
Late
Anyway,
30s.
he was telling me about what we used to do here 30 years ago. I'd forgotten a lot of this, how we would, all the activities that we did, and I thought, yeah, he said, you just know how much we love those things.
Yeah.
And what memories that created. And so, next question is dealing with young people, especially teenagers. The famous question is, how do I know I'm in love? How do I know I love you? How do I know he loves me? Is he just using that as a line? How do you answer that? How do you know when you ask that person to spend the rest of their life with you, how do you know that that's it?
When I was younger, that was unfortunately the type of person I was. I used the "I love you"
Oh, yeah.
to get.
It's a good line.
It
Yeah.
is. It's a great line, and it took. I grew up in a troubled home, so I really didn't understand or know what love was correctly.
See, I think a lot of people look for love in all the wrong places.
Okay.
I'm trying to get behind you.
I think they look for love in drugs, alcohol, sex, whatever. So, what is love? Love is a feeling of contentment. I don't know. Warm feeling. What is it? How do you know that when you ask this person to marry you, that you're going to spend 50 years with them?
Mm-hmm.
My wife and I have known each other since we were 10 years old. We've known each other for 22 years now. And my wife, and she's watching this, so she's going to be hating on me for a little bit. But when she was 10 years old, she knew she was in love with me. Me being the 10-year-old, no, girls, ew, ew, no, ew.
Yeah.
And then I grew up, and through years of heartache and pain and being with the wrong women,
God led you right back to her.
in 2016, we caught up again. I asked her out, and now we've been married for, it's 2020, for almost 3 years now, coming up on 3 years. We've been together for 5, but we've known each other for 22 years.
That's amazing to me. Seeing
Push the silver button again.
Seeing how we've been married 50 years, and I met her in September and married her in December. Now, you talk about a gamble. Met her in September, asking her to marry me in October, and we walked down the aisle in December.
Well, explain love to me when in India for eons they've been parents have been arranging these marriages and it seems to work. I'm not saying it's perfect by any stretch. I'm sure there's some really bad stories.
Over in India, they're arranged marriage since they're little kids, and they don't put love around. Oh, you meet this person, and you like the way they look, and you like the way you have sex, and you like the way when you hang out. No, you learn to love each other over years, and then you're married.
They're kind of like trained and brainwashed about how to
A little
love.
bit. I wouldn't say brainwashed.
But
But
don't you think when you marry
brainwashed in
someone,
that it's acceptable.
unless you've known them your whole life, and even then, when you marry someone, that's an entirely different situation, and you both of you together learn to love each other.
Yeah.
I mean,
So-
so what they do is they do it before they actually go through the ceremony.
I mean, the mystery of all this is that whether you were 10 years old or you found you
21 or 22.
you chose to marry within
Right.
a lightning strike of a moment, you know, or in my case, my wife and I didn't meet until we were in our late 20s, mid to late 20s, but I had a strong sense of the person that I would marry. from an early age, and I've said this to the church, and this may seem just too bizarre for some of you all listening out there, but I remember asking the question as like a 10-year-old when I walked into Walmart, of all places, in Canton, Georgia. As I was walking, sort of trying to keep up with my mom and whatever she was getting that day, because we went to Walmart at least 3 times a week back in the mid-'80s. I remember asking the Lord in my own daydream, like, where is my wife? And I remember distinctly the voice of God in my prayer, in praying to God. I remember God saying to me, like it was yesterday, she's in New England and she's Jewish. And I remember thinking, this is the weirdest thing I've ever heard in my
Canton, Georgia.
And I remember just holding that to my heart, and it came true when I met my wife in seminary, who happens to be from Connecticut, and her father happens to be Jewish. So, anyway, love was, I guess the reason I bring it up is because was love always on the cards? God's plan for you, was it always this, or for me, was it always this? I have to believe it. I believe God has to be the source
Here I
of
am,
all love.
My time in the Presbyterian Church is very, very evident in my life. I think God has a plan for us, and He put us together for a reason. Well, we laughingly say He put us together so we'd produce 3 children. And all of the headaches and heartaches and joy that goes with that, and now 4 children and 7 grandchildren. So I think that's all part of God's plan. I really do. But I hate to see the world today cheapen love so much. I think we can't distinguish lust from love.
Agreed.
Well, it's where we've let Satan get too much into the holes.
Look at the media. What did they say? I mean, we're talking basic. Well, how do you sell stuff?
Sex.
You sell it on sex.
Yeah.
I used to always, when I taught class and we got off of this, which we invariably did, what type of toothpaste do you buy? What type of shirt do you wear? What type of car do you
They
drive?
don't put people like me on the camera for a reason.
Why? Why do you think I would always say, can you see me advertise that I'll fall? I'd never buy it if you know.
They put like size 0 models with unrealistic bodies.
Oh, yeah.
They put guys that are like chiseled and like 6 or 8 pack abs that work out 6-7 times
Perfect
a
beard.
week.
Yeah.
Perfect beard.
that's
They're
why.
all maintenance. And there's nothing wrong with those people if that's what they enjoy doing. There's nothing wrong with
Yeah,
that.
but it attracts us because of sexuality.
Exactly.
But look at what
because
we've
they're
done
not
with
gonna
this.
None of us in our entire lives will ever
That's
be
right.
in a commercial.
But look
That's
at
right.
what we've done with this. We have turned, you use the female model, the male model. We're raising a generation of people that have eating disorders, that end up deep psychological problems because they're constantly comparing themselves to that.
Yeah, but how many people from y'all's time period have skin cancer from laying in the sun too long?
I don't know. I'm
Well,
sure.
there's a whole other piece of this that is clear to me, is that our society tells us that through advertising and media that it's a white world.
Yeah.
It's a white world, and so Santa Claus is white, and the Tooth Fairy is white, and all so the world. I mean, Jesus is white, right? So we get this sort of the media puts this sort of expectation of all things, and I think ultimately it blocks us from love, and from the true source of love, which is God.
Well, to be honest, I do think Santa Claus is white. He lives on the North Pole. I don't think he's getting a lot of sunlight. I think he is white.
Over the millennia, he has lost his melanin.
Somehow I don't see Santa Claus stretched out on the beach.
He's lost his melanin content. He's not Hispanic. He's not. He's not.
But you're right. Jesus was not white.
No, he was probably curly-haired
they're-
little
they're-
Jewish.
It was like a darker olive
Yeah,
complexion.
they're from the Middle East, and over
He
there.
probably didn't have blue
He
eyes.
never saw Jesus with a hat on. He never had a hat on.
Why
So that means he was constantly
Did
exposed
he have
to
a
this.
yarmulke?
I don't. He was
He's
constant-
Jewish. Didn't he have a yarmulke?
As he's walking through the desert, he's
I
got.
think the only thing I've seen pictures of it.
He would
him
cover
with
his head.
that veil kind of
Yeah.
thing.
When he
just
goes
to
to
keep
the temple.
sun out. Yeah.
Well, when you go to the temple, you have to
hot
cover your
as
head.
hot as you know what.
Well, you have to. I've seen some of those clothes. The clothes that they wear, even though it's really hot, they're made from like really thin fabric. So when there is a breeze, which isn't often, when there is a breeze, it does actually cool you down.
I'm here to tell you though, it gets cold in Jerusalem. I mean, around March time, we have what they called the Siberian Express. I think that's what they called it, and it was coming straight out of Russia. And it was like when we flew out, we flew out sideways because the wind was coming in probably 40 miles an hour, from Russia with love. But I guess my question about my personal question is that I think about sociopaths. Like we when we talk about psychiatry, you hear a lot about sociopaths. And there's this conversation, and of course, psychopaths are the violent form of sociopaths. Yeah. But sociopathy, and I would say I have experienced sociopathy with some, especially one person I dated in particular, who I think she was a sociopath, which sounds crazy, except that I don't think she had she could not engage love from an emotional perspective, and I do think our world has created the world and Satan, the enemy who is the prince of this world, have created a culture that creates sociopaths who don't know what love is, who have been abused and love has been wrongly defined to them. I think the world does have these hardened hearts, and I mean at one point in my life I had a hardened heart, having sort of been escaped with my mother and my older sister from an abusive marriage / family in my very earliest ages that I don't remember. I was 16 months old, but over the course of the years of not being in that relationship with my bio dad, my heart was hardened. But the love of God I'm just saying it, like the love of God really in that moment, and when I was 26, compelled me to forgive my father, and there was where the pathway of love began again. So I think I know this is gonna sound a little touchy-feely, but I think humans are affected by the harm of this world, and love, I think, the pathways of love can be really blocked, and so we can talk about the warm fuzzies of love, but I think a lot of people have a hard time with the conversation of what love is, or confused by love because they've been told what love is and not shown what love is.
I think a lot of people confuse love with lust, as Joe said, and then a lot of people use that for instant gratification.
Right.
That's right.
And they confuse all of that, like lust, gratification, instant gratification, and love. For some reason, that is all lumped together. And there are people that honestly feel like that one night stand or that one case of beer, like that's what love is, like that puts them in the right spot. And little do they know, that one night stand, that when they wake up in the morning, they're like, oh, what did I do? They sneak out, put their clothes on, the walk of shame in the morning, guys and girls. Like, that's not love, and people just don't know what that is.
Well, they come to the church, and the church is having this same conversation, and they don't get the answer they're looking for from the institution.
You know, and to me, in John, God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son. When we had our first child, and I held Jessica and looked at her, I thought about that. I thought, I don't think I love anybody or anything enough to give up this child. Now, that to me sort of defines love, that you love that more than you love yourself. Mm-hmm. And you know, that to me just sums it up right there.
Well, that's like the two ladies that cleaned the baby in the Bible, and the true mother's like, let her have him.
Yeah.
You know, the true mother's like, let her have him, that way you don't kill my kid.
Solomon had that right. He was going to split it in half.
The other one was going with it like, yeah, split it in half.
Yeah, just fine with me. Sure,
then,
do it.
The king's like, no, I know who the real mother is.
Well, the real mother said, you take her, give her to the other woman.
But that way the child will survive.
Yeah, that's right. We don't want to kill my daughter,
and see, I think
my son.
Was a problem with love? Has it always been there, or is it because now we're in a society where we have so many time-saving devices, and we have more time on our hands?
It's always been there, because if you look at Cain and Abel.
Well, that's true. And David and Bathsheba.
You know, the whole story with Cain and Abel, it was all about jealousy.
Lust has always gotten in the way.
Well, then there's the prodigal son. He left, took everything that he had, left his father and brother, and then came back, and his father welcomed him with open arms, like give him clothes, give him food, like he was ashamed, but he came back. And
you know, I have trouble with that. I have trouble with the.
You're the son that never left.
The one that never left. He sat there and worked for the dad, and all that. And
Well, and who in that parable was the son that never left? It was those rabbis who stood there faithfully at the temple, the institutionalists who said, "We stayed, we never left the church," and here you are running after the guy who went out carousing and boozing and cavorting, and here we are. What about me? Yeah, I'm the guy, I am the guy.
And say to me, it's like,
shadows.
Here I am.
I'm the
I've
prodigal
done it all
son.
good.
There's two prodigal sons. There's two prodigious rich prodigal sons. There's two rich sons, and that's the beautiful thing to me. The most beautiful thing about this parable is, yes, we see the forgiveness that he gives the son who went out boozing and carousing and ended up in a pigsty. But there's another rich son sitting in the backdrop, angry as hell because he stood there.
I got shafted.
He stood there faithfully.
He did get shafted. In the end, he did get shafted.
Oh, you took your inheritance and spent it all. And meanwhile, here I am. Yeah.
Kind of. He kind of got shafted, but God never stopped. I mean, God the Father, never left him.
Yeah.
Yeah, but see, I also look back at the parable of the lost sheep, which is something me and Brandon talked about that one time. About you leave the 99 to go find that one.
Mm-hmm.
That's what God does.
Right.
He knows that we're protected, so he goes out to find. He's with us. So when we go out looking for that lost person, he's going to look for that one lost sheep.
But do you know that is a hard thing to explain to anybody? When you have more than one child, or more than two, we have 3 children, and they have disagreements. And, now that they're all grown, they all have their own opinion on where they got it from. But anyway, they're very strong with telling me how they believe. And one of my children just came out and said, how can you keep forgiving her? Because I love her.
Yeah.
Oh no, there's a limit to that. No, there's not.
So that's so grace
That's very hard.
So where is the fine line between truth and grace? Because both love exists with truth and love exists with grace. God is both truth and grace, right? He's the truth, which is this is right, this is wrong, this is up, this is down, and grace, which says I will always love you and I will always be there for you.
But why in our world is grace considered a sign of weakness?
Because
You're being a milksop, you're being a wet noodle, you're letting
because
them
it
use you.
assumes you're a hypocrite, having said what you said truthfully. Like I know that I have to live this way, and this way. Like I don't spend more than I have. I don't stay out late. I'm faithful to my spouse or whatever. Those sort of this is what I am about. And yet in the midst of that, you'll open your doors to someone who maybe isn't, and that's considered by the prodigal son who stayed as hypocrisy.
The whole business of forgiveness and love is just so anti what we live in.
It's really hard to forgive people. Like there are people that I know God is telling me, myself and you have talked about this. God is telling me to forgive them, and I know that God has forgiven them. Those people have not repented, but those people hurt me so much mentally and physically. I don't know how to forgive them. Like I've actually prayed to God, please God, help me forgive these people, and he hasn't. If he's answered me, I'm not listening.
It may take longer than you want it to.
Absolutely.
Uh-huh.
And in my heart, I want to forgive them. I truly do want to forgive these people, but in my brain is like, they hurt you so much. They don't deserve your forgiveness.
But Brandon, I had someone do something to me 30 years ago, and it's taken me almost 30 years to get over it, because finally when I did let go of it, I thought, whew, like a load was lifted off of me. Love is it's very hard to explain. It's also very hard to see in our world today.
Well, one thing too we don't look at, love is humble.
That's true. Humility.
We are prideful. We have a lot of ego. And a lot of our downfall is pride and ego. Because it hardens your heart.
Well, that just hurts, Brian. I don't want to hear that.
I'm sorry I offended you, but I'm telling you the truth.
It is the truth. It sucks, though, because we don't really want to... I don't want to think about my own issues.
And you want to know what that is? That's tough love.
That's right. That's right. No one wants tough love.
Speaking of ego, there was one time, and Tiffany yelled at me for this, but there was one time, she can tell you the story later, but I used to go to the gym, and I was a power lifter for a very long time, and I still do occasionally. We're in the process of getting our gym up in our garage, and ego is very hard to leave at the door in the gym. very
Oh
hard.
yeah.
Oh, I imagine, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I was able to deadlift like 450 some odd pounds. And I wasn't warming up correctly that day, and I was just like, I'm just gonna go for it, and I went for it. And lo and behold, like there was a little twinge in my back, and
You just
getting worse. Like within an hour, I'm like, I can't move, I can't bend my back, I can't nothing. But it's all because of ego. Because of ego, I have a hernia in my lower back between my L4 and L5.
Oh yeah.
I have a hernia that has affected my lifting ever since because of ego. Especially as guys. Guys tend to have a very large ego, especially when it comes to manly things. Hunting, fishing, going to the gym, getting the girls, going to the bar, whatever the case
I
may
think
be.
women have egos, but in different areas.
Exactly.
It expresses itself differently.
Guys, we tend to have an issue. One of the things I remember from the Navy is anytime I was around the other guys, the other single guys at the time, it was always, oh, I went to the bar last night and I picked up a girl. This is who she was. And then another guy would come out another night, oh, I picked up another girl and another girl and another girl. And then that's how it would just be. Lo and behold, like, there are stories, unfortunately, of an entire ship that had gone out with the same girl. One girl for the entire boat.
I bet that created a problem.
No, because the guys were like, yeah, high-fiving each other. But, like, you don't know what love is. Like, that's not love. Like, you just slept with the same girl as the entire rest of your boat. That says one thing about the girl, but that says another thing about the guys that are okay with that.
Why do you think in the Bible God put a ban on premarital sex? Why, if that's, do you realize how much problem that creates in our country? Promiscuity, cheating, being sexually active, really active before. I mean,
I think because of the implications of childbearing and families, because of, I think it's because the power of love, because love is so powerful on the human that there need to be guidelines.
and you know, David, when I talked about this in class, I'd always say, I'd hold my hand out and I said, all right, I have love in this hand. Describe it. You can't see it. You can't touch it. You going to deny that it's not real? How many wars have been fought over love? How many people have killed over love? Right. All this over here is hate. Mm-hmm. Same thing. Very powerful forces. You know, and I go back to, I always would quote John, God loved us enough that he gave his only son, the ultimate sacrifice. So if God loved me enough, then I ought to pay attention to what he's trying to tell me and kind of warn me. I always told young people when I worked with them, especially, I'll never forget, had come to me, he says, Mr. Loach, I'm going to sleep with my girlfriend this weekend. What do you think about that? Now here I am teaching biology, and this kid stays after class and asks me that.
There was a teacher I had, my health teacher, every day after any of the health classes, he would walk down the hallway and just scream, abstinence. He would just walk down the hallway and scream abstinence. And like, there would be, like, I went to school, there was probably 1,200 kids in my high school at any given time. Abstinence, just up and down the hallways all the time. Right, we'd have 5 minutes to get to our next class, to walk wherever it was, and he'd walk from his health class all the way to the cafeteria, which was on the other side of the school, just screaming abstinence.
But do you realize how in our country today, society, that is not what you want. You want the other side of the coin. You want to be sexually active. You want, you want to be where you attract the whole business. So
it's because they promote it in everything. Your video games, your movies,
everything.
Your
I was a virgin till I was 17 years old. And there were guys that I knew that ragged on me because I was a virgin till I was 17.
It is hard in today's society to make choices that are not with the group.
Yeah.
Especially if you're, having spent 50 of my years with teenagers, they are a different pack. And they're not really, because we're just old teenagers. Yeah. I want that house. I want it to look like the Joneses. I got to have this car, the whole bit. they want to be part of a group. Do you know it took me?
Well,
I'm
look at
72.
the people that come to the church.
No,
They want to be part of a group.
It took me 60 years to realize I don't need to be part of a group because I'm not part of a group. But not belonging to a group has shaped me a lot. Eatonton, growing up in this town, created a whole, whatever. So sex, a lot of kids use sex and things like that to be accepted.
See, there's
A lot of people want somebody to say, I love you.
Yeah.
I feel loved.
I was out in Tacoma for like 9 months during my seminary time just to do some interning and just it was kind of a vision quest, what Native Americans call a vision quest. Like I sort of got dropped into a place that I had no familial engagements, and all I had was the people that welcomed me into that local church. And the pastor there, his name's John Graciano. He's still around, still pastor out in Tacoma. He said one of the first things he said to me was, the problem with our world is that humans, no matter who they are, suffer from a love deficit.
That's right.
And I had never heard that phrase, like almost like a banker's term, right? Like a love deficit. And the job that we have as pastors or as men and women of God our job is to help people understand that the only place they can truly be filled with love is God.
Do you remember the first time we met? You asked me, why do I want to come to this church and why do I want to have faith in God? Do you remember what I said? I said, because I need love in my life. Mm-hmm. And we discussed that further and you understood why I said that. Mm-hmm. But going to church and finding faith in God and meeting all of you. Like, I love all of you.
Right.
Not the same way that I love my wife, not
Sure.
the same way that I love my daughter or love God, but I love all of you.
Or Philly cheesesteaks.
Or Philly cheesesteaks. Philly cheesesteaks is just, it's one notch higher than you guys. Sorry.
Well,
sorry.
we know how we...
Yeah,
right?
but which Philly cheesesteak?
Real Philly cheesesteak.
I know, which stores? And they're
Geno's.
like, Geno's, okay.
Geno's.
See, that's the
There's
argument.
only one, Geno's.
That's the argument.
No, Pat's is good, but there's Geno's.
Okay. Is that the fancy one or is that the simple one? There's like one that's like really like flashy on one corner, and then there's another one that's sort of...
Well, getting off topic, Geno's only serves cheesesteaks and fries. You can either get a whiz with or a whiz without.
Okay.
That's you get
Cheese
a cheesesteak
whiz.
with cheese whiz, and a whiz with has onions.
You
A
know what
whiz
he's
with
talking
is
about.
what does not.
It's
A
a
whiz with has
restaurant.
onions. Whiz without does not have onions.
This is very important.
Then you go to Pat's. Pat's has hamburgers, cheesesteaks,
Oh, yeah.
pizzas, that stuff. So
They're
no,
just playing.
No.
They're just playing.
Geno's.
Okay.
Only
Back to
Geno's.
what you were saying.
Your wife
Sorry.
says,
Yeah, back to the
your wife
subject.
says Geno's all day.
Geno's, exactly. Tiffany even agrees with me. Geno's all day.
That's why you married her. She
Pat's
agrees.
has its place, but
It's like Pepsi. You know, Pepsi has a place in this world. It's
Thank
just
you.
not in
Yeah,
my house.
Not in
I
my
have now
kitchen.
forgotten what I was talking about.
Love deficit.
Love deficit. Yeah.
With cheesesteak.
But do you realize...
Sorry.
I think if you really look at the majority of the people that make good decisions in their life and really, however you want to define success, come from people who showed them love.
Right.
Various people.
Right.
And see, I think that's what as a church we need to do, is we need to show these... You don't ever know who comes through those doors. You have no idea, as a radio announcer used to say, what bag of rocks they're dragging with them.
There are some videos I love watching where the pastor or somebody with the church will go outside of their church, just right outside, put on makeup and a fake beard, wear a hat, wear baggy clothes,
Yeah.
and they'll have a little sign that says, we'll work for food or
Yeah.
anything else, something. And they'll pretend to be a bum or homeless or whatever the case may be. And the amount of people, it works both ways. The amount of people that either walk past them is just like, wow, it's freezing. Just invite the person in. Like, hey, I know that I would do that. I have done that. I've invited people to the church. I know that I would go up to him like, hey, you okay? Can I pray for you? Would you like to come into the church with us? You can get some warmth in there. You can meet some people. You can have a good time. We're going to have a potluck after. We have donuts. We have coffee. It's free. You don't need to bring anything. Just come on. Come in. Get warm for a little bit. Let us pray for you. Let us pray with God.
Well, and acts of love are... that's the other thing. We get so stuck in the institution that we think the only place to do it is in the church. Literally in a physical church. But like last night, had a phone call from a former parishioner in Athens. His mother broke down on the bypass just out past Southeastern building. Is that right? Southeastern building?
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure that someone stole her catalytic converter at the gas station. And she's a lady going to Cordele from, she was driving to Cordele from the Athens area. And he called me and he said, she's out there on the bypass, she's by herself out there, it's cold. And I'm in Gainesville, I can't get there. So I drove down, put the girls in the car, get them out of the house. We drove down, we got there and I walked up to her really slowly with my hands showing because I did not want her to think I was some, crazy man. And I said, I come in peace. I'm a pastor who happens to know your son. She was on the phone with her son. And she said, the pastor's here. And he knew it was me. Well, the bottom line, that was an act of love on the one hand, but that's kind of, we expect, that's what we do. But what I was amazed by was the police officer. He called the non-emergency line, and Eaton Police showed up, and he said, close up your car, you're going to get in the car with me, and I'm going to take you to the police department, and you're going to be in a place that's warm until the tow truck shows up. Now that is love, but that never gets reported out in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
We only hear the lack of love, or the dearth of love.
Because guess what sells?
Yeah, but the police department, there they were.
There are two things that sell: sex, and as I know you've said numerous times in some of your sermons, if it bleeds, it leads.
That's right.
Those are the two things that sell: sex and blood. Sometimes together, sometimes not.
That's right. And is it any wonder that I always say this is kind of an academic thing, but so the God of sexuality is almost, when you talk about gods and goddesses worldwide, almost always, however he or she or however that entity is named, is almost always the god of sex or fertility and the god of war. The same God. Yeah. So why are sex and violence so connected? They are. They find themselves to be connected, and it's the opposite of love that sort of draws that reality.
It's like horror movies. I am a horror movie guru. I love horror movies. Even like the horrible B-rated movies, I love them. Killer Clowns from Outer Space, hysterically bad. But it was a good horror movie.
I've never heard of that movie.
Killer Clowns from Outer Space, horrible movie, you have to watch it.
Okay.
No way.
I'll put it on the list. Somewhere. Somewhere at the bottom.
It's a cult classic.
Okay.
But in the majority of horror movies, specifically slasher and monster movies, in the majority of them, there are sex scenes. There are naked women. There are naked men. For some reason, it's the sex aspect in the horror movies and the actual gore and horror itself both release the same endorphins, but on a different level. So it kind of mixes it all together.
So God is calling us away from sex for its own sake. Is calling us to harness sexuality, but to do it in a way that is fruitful and loving, which means that there are limitations that God is trying to place on it, and has done it successfully at times, and the world has sort of turned its back on that at times. But the other thing is He's trying to help us not harm each other with war.
Well, I agree now that the world is definitely turning its back on sex and what is normal in sex. Like,
you mean when you say turning its back on sex, you mean turning away from a traditional, a Christian or Judeo-Christian version of what?
Yes, and I'm going to go to the extreme for this because I know that there's some things that are a little touchy, but I know the majority of the people who at least watch this agree with me. People that are consider themselves MAPS, minor attracted people, they're pedophiles. Like, there are some people who are honestly trying to fight to make that normal.
Sure. Right. Well, and that is the world, and the world has normalized that at multiple times in societies, right?
And any time that the world has normalized,
that's right,
gay, lesbian sex, pedophilia, any of that stuff, all of those civilizations, around the time that they start accepting that, is when those civilizations fall.
Well, I would also add to that when societies normalize child sacrifice or sacrifice of humans, which we have normalized,
which we do
in our
tons
lifetime.
of abortions.
My lifetime has been a normalization from like '74, Roe v. Wade, to now in our society where humans are dehumanized and abortion is legalized and and to some celebrated.
There's only
That's the society
there's
we live
only a handful of cases that I agree with abortion. Very small, and this I may piss some people off with this, but I think that like if you are raped or anything like that and you are then pregnant, then I agree with yes. If the mother chooses abortion, okay, I can understand that.
Right.
But getting an abortion because you got knocked up by your boyfriend who doesn't love you, or this is your 15th abortion, which is common now because you just don't want to have kids. No, it's called condoms. It's called the pill. No.
Sure.
There are plenty of things that you can use that are going to protect life.
Sure.
And people say that if my body, my choice. Okay, I get it. My body, my choice. That is no longer your body inside of you. That is another human being. It's a clump of cells, yes, but that is the creation of a human being. And I love humans. It's why I carry. It's why I can still carry. It's not because I want to hurt people.
Right.
It's because I love people and I want to protect them if something bad happens.
Sure.
Not just me, but I would protect a stranger on the street if I had to.
Sure. So that's the truth. You just dropped some major truth. So where does grace fall into that? Where if love is defined as truth and grace, how does that truth find a palatable digestion into the world? Because the world would hear that truth and it will maybe be turned on to it and say,
I already know that I'm probably going to be canceled on Facebook right now. I'm going to be canceled.
Well,
100% fact, I am canceled right now.
So I guess the grace of God has to somewhere, because I mean my family, my friends, I have friends who have lived those realities that you just defined, whether it be abortion or being a part of abortion or being in a divorce scenario or remarrying with broken homes. And we have to have grace upon those who have not lived into what you just defined as what we expect or what God expects.
The adjective of grace is gracious. I think of the people in my life that were gracious. Mm-hmm. They were pretty strong. There's a really cheesy movie, maybe you call it chick flick, Steel Magnolias, where they talk about us, that the women in the South are gracious. And that's true. A lot of the women in my life were gracious, but they weren't wimps. But they had a power and the ability to be graceful. Brian used a term with love that I think is very interesting, tough love.
Mm-hmm. Myself and Tiff just got done watching the movie Sweet Home Alabama.
I love that. Yeah.
And I love how she insults everyone in the bar at one time. And everyone is just very yeah, it's okay. And they forgave her. Like the second that she walked up to them and was like, look, I really am sorry. I didn't mean to. They absolutely forgave her. But when her almost future mother-in-law came down, the New York Democrat politician came down, started insulting everyone. She had no problem just punching her out because she was not gracious. But everyone else that was from that area, they understood, yeah, we get it, okay. And they were gracious about it.
And, a lot of people think we're back to love, that love is all warm and fuzzy and, hearts and flowers. And I think about my parents. They surely designed the word tough love. They had to. They had to. It was, what is tough love? When you love somebody enough that you know it's going to hurt, that your decision for them is going to hurt.
It's like telling a hard truth. There's little white lies, like how you looking today, and meanwhile your spouse looks like they just rolled out of bed with 17
you look fine.
baby, you look sweet, you look great, you look good. Just go in and wash your face off, everything will be fine.
So we're running out of time.
Yeah.
We've got to do a longer film of this. That's been fun. We didn't cuss that much. That's pretty good. We didn't. We probably angered somebody out there.
Brandon's off of Facebook.
I don't know, but I'll leave us with this: that the Shema, right? This is the great commandment to look. I don't know if it's the great. Well, that's not the great commandment, but the Shema. Jesus said. He said it. He repeated it out of Deuteronomy. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. That was the expectation. That is the great expectation for all of us. So. Merry Christmas coming on Christmas Eve. We're going to be here at 5 p.m. and we will worship in the historic sanctuary. Please know that the doors are open. We hope you'll come and share Christmas Eve with us and ring the bell, even if it's 6 o'clock and not midnight. God bless you and have a good day.